Peter Perfume Playford is not with us today. He's on the road in Barcelona or somewhere, but we are joined by another pretty boy winger. This one, however, joins us as the most prolific point scorer from the Western Force and former Wallaby, Mr. Cameron Shepherd. Shep, welcome, boy. You look nice and comfortable with your little cold beer in front of you there, mate.
No, lovely introduction. A lot more successful, you also had to add after the comparison with Pete Playford there. But, mate, great to be here and really excited to have a little chat about rugby.
Yeah, now look, we're obviously going to talk a bit about all things happening in the Super Rugby comp and particularly the Aussie teams. But before we get into the most pressing issue by far, I'm glad we've got you on here this week. There's some real issues around the future of the Force. There's talk of an Australian team being axed, and the rumour has it that that's the Force. What are your thoughts on this, mate?
Yeah, first and foremost, very disappointed. I think not only if it's the Force or any team in Australian rugby, I'd be disappointed to see them go. 2 weeks ago, it was the Rebels. Last week, it was the Brumbies. This week, it's the Force. I think if you look at it rationally, though, yeah, most successful team ever. The Brumbies, Rebels have private ownership. They're not going to be too happy about it. The Force are definitely on the chopping block. They've struggled for performance and wins. They're struggling financially, so it would make sense. The issue that I have with it is the way the ARU is supporting the club. Now, from the moment that the Force was their inception in the competition, they haven't really had the support of the East Coast. The East Coast clubs have been against them because they've had to poach their players to create a squad. The ARU was against them because of the amount of money that the private companies were using to fund bringing players over. You know, Matt Giteau, a perfect example with Tim Johnson and Firepower and the amount of money they threw at him to steal him from the Brumbies. But that all aside, over 12 years, so many people have spent so much time and effort building the club to where it is. And a lot of people that had nothing to do with the stuff in the past just wanted to see Western Australian rugby succeed for the future generations as much as the current team, and give these young kids that love rugby and want to be involved with it a pathway. Now, if you pull that away, unfortunately, I think you're going to roadblock it. You're going to remove 20% of the professional contracts that we have in Australian rugby, and I just don't think it's good for the game.
Are you not agreed that a team has to go, though, in terms of that we don't have depth to sustain it? Because the results, mate, for mine, I just can't get my head around it. The depth just doesn't seem to be there.
Sure, I agree with that. Look, we're always going to be more successful if we only have 4 teams. But I think the ARU can't just stand back and say, what way do we find it more successful for 4 teams to succeed? For the depth of the game and the expansion of the game across Australia, you're in a market in Western Australia that is dominated by the West Coast Eagles and the Fremantle Dockers. We've finally started to see the change where guys are deciding to play rugby instead of play AFL, and now all that hard work's going to be cut off. It is going to be hard, but I think the ARU and the East Coast rugby public and media needs to start supporting the Force instead of dragging them down all the time.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, one of the reasons, if they do go that I'll be really sad to see, they're mostly around sentimental reasons, because I think at the moment they're really starting to gel as a unit. You know, when we've looked at the Tars, they just haven't been convincing at all. Yeah, great second half against the Rebels that we'll talk about later. But other than that, they've been terrible. And it have looked like a bunch of pea hearts in a lot of way for mine. The Rebels haven't been convincing. You know, the Reds, there's been nothing there. Whereas the Force, for me, even against the Crusaders, you know, the score blew out in the last 5 minutes or so. But they were really in there, you know. And for me, when you look at the coming in off the back of the NRC,
yeah.
You and I spoke about this. I call those little bad boys halfway through the season. They went on with it.
Did.
But, mate, they've got the makings of a really good team. I'd love to see them stick around and go on with it.
100%. I think 13 of the matchday squad from the last game were actually homegrown talent. Now, come on, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I don't think even the Brumbies would be able to say they have 13 all from Canberra. No way. So I think things need to change. The ARU needs to stop being reactive to these situations and being a little bit more proactive. One of the things I was talking about with a few guys the other day was saying that the international exposure, interest from players needs to change. The ARU doesn't want too many people that aren't eligible to play for the Wallabies playing for their national teams. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't think we should open it up so it's like the English Premier League and you got 99% from other countries and only 1% from your own country. But we need to encourage some of the best players in the world between 24 and 30 to come and play for these teams. Now, if we get a few of those guys, the quality is going to increase, the team's performance is going to increase, fans are going to want to come back because they, there's so many people from different countries living all around the world that want to watch international players play. And I can only see it being as a positive. I know a few kids might miss out on that early window, but I think if you're looking at, the lesser of two evils, that's a small price to pay to make sure that our provincial teams succeed.
And if it's the right player too, and it generates that groundswell of interest. I remember there was talk that Checker was bringing Brian O'Driscoll across with him and all that sort of thing. Everyone was talking about if it's the right player, it's going to
very
generate
different
a lot of interest.
to Greg Somerville at 35 going to the Rebels when he couldn't even walk.
Yeah.
So that's the difference I'm trying to create.
Fair enough. And what about for mine? Look, I think a team's got to go. I just would have thought the Rebels would be the logical one as well. You know what? If the Force go, you know what I'm really going to miss is the fact that you can crack a beer at 1 or 3 p.m. and watch the Kiwi games and sit straight through till freaking 5 o'clock the next morning or 8:30 the next morning watching the Jaguars over in Argentina. And that Perth game is a crucial cog between when your 7:30 game finishes and your 2 a.m. Cape Town kickoff. You've got a Force game.
Very, very good point.
That is just going to leave a big void in my life. Let me tell you, the missus will be happy. But
the other point to consider is, and I was chatting with Andrew Mertens about it the other day, apologies for the name dropping, but he was talking more about, say, a conference style where you're not actually connected to them during the regular season, but extend the final series. So you've got a playoffs, kind of like you would say in the NBA or something like that, where two competitions can run simultaneously, although you wouldn't, if ever, maybe play each other. And then in the finals, it would be an extended final series where there'd be a crossover between the two conferences. That would then allow them to stay there. The travel and all that wouldn't be as much.
I mean,
and then
complete agreement. And Playford and I have actually spoken about the same idea on the show. Good to hear you're listening to it.
Yeah.
So, no, but it's totally. It makes so much sense. But also in terms of if you just have your own local comps, just that fostering that sense of tribalism. I'd love to see us just go Aussies and Kiwis. I think we've got the international aspect of it right, but a lot of it's coming at the expense of the tribalism.
Yeah.
No one cares when we're playing the Kings, or no one's watching the Jaguars play the Kings, or whoever it may be.
Yeah.
I'd love to see us go to our own little conferences, and then, as you say, that extended final series at the end would be fantastic.
I agree.
Yeah. So look, we're going to take a quick break now, and we'll be back to talk about last weekend's Super Rugby results.